Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we turn to talking about Star Trek, the science fiction action adventure series that's been really falling from grace lately. Star Trek was once a great and well beloved series that kind of was called hard science fiction. It was a little more serious and hardcore and had these kinds of political messages and stuff back in the day, especially in the original series or two. Star Trek, the original series from the 70s, Star Trek, the Next Generation in the 90s, both had really great followings, great stories, and, good points and lessons and all kinds of good stuff in there. And they also got spun off into movies, which were mildly successful, some of them more than others. And I would even say the new Star Trek movies, the reboot, was pretty good in the beginning. I know the first one from 2009 was very fun to watch, and it added a lot of excitement and energy to the series. J.J. Abrams directed it, which was something he did even before he rebooted the Star Wars franchise. Before that, he did Star Trek, and that was kind of his testing ground. And I think a lot of people liked it. It definitely had its flaws. It wasn't perfect, but it also wasn't like too woke and too like progressive and terrible and like liberal led. And that's the problem that they've come to now. Now, ever since those movies kind of died off, Star Trek has started these new TV series and they've rebooted things and come up with a couple series that really have been terrible. The first one was called Star Trek Discovery. This was their first attempt to bring it back to TV, and it aired on CBS All Access, this new streaming service, which first of all was kind of weird because it didn't have anything else on there. It was their attempt to start a streaming service, kind of like the beginning of the streaming wars, really, because this year the streaming wars really heated up. And last year we got Disney Plus. This year we got HBO Max. Like things really elevated, but CBS All Access was one of the early ones. But the problem with them was all they really had was Star Trek. They did this Star Trek Discovery show, and it was pretty horrible. Everyone hated it. It got really woke. It turned into a total mess. And we're going to talk about how things have gotten even worse since then, because now we're talking about two other series they've created that I think are worse in a lot of ways, because at least with Star Trek Discovery, they almost tried to do something new, but they failed at that because they got woke. They made this main character a woke minority chick, similar to what they did with Star Wars. Like now they only have female leads all the time, because then the next series to talk about, and this is the more recent one, earlier this year, Star Trek Picard came out, which was them kind of bringing back the Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation. And it was just as bad, probably worse, because the problem with this one was they brought back an old character and kind of ruined him. And they kind of got him, he's way too old. He's not like really excited anymore. And that's not the worst, because Star Trek doesn't necessarily need like young people running around and all ripped up like it's a Marvel movie, but they kind of seem to want to do that. Like all their new stuff is really action packed, and it's a lot of like loud fight scenes in your faces, and they've totally abandoned the proper original Star Trek formula that was more slow paced, more interesting, more like daytime TV kind of stuff. Like it seemed like it was lower budget at sometimes, but they did it in a good way. It was interesting stories that had a point and a lesson and stuff like that. But the new stuff just kind of throws that out the window. It's turned into action schlock. And with Picard, they also had another female lead. Like Picard is obviously the leader in that show, but then there was this other girl. I think her name was like Soji or something like that. She had like two characters because there was like twins or something, and it ends up being this Data's daughter or something weird. It's a whole mess, and that show was totally lame. And the other problem with it too, now that we're talking about it, and before we get to this new issue and problem, was Star Trek Picard, it was like a long movie broken up into multiple chapters instead of being the traditional Star Trek formula, which had each episode like self contained. Now, there sure was a few two or three parters over the years, but in general, when you pull up a Star Trek episode, you could watch it within an hour and get the whole story. And it's kind of like a serial thing. Every episode, they go to a different planet or have a different problem, that kind of thing. But with the new stuff, it's all like a long seasonal thing, and it just carries on and on. And there's cliffhangers every time. It's really annoying, but that's really besides the point. And that's the preface, because I wanted you guys to get the introduction and know what's been going on with Star Trek before we talk about this new story, because the new one is doing a similar thing. They're ruining a former captain and making him terrible in the present. And it's also getting woke. As this article says, it says, New Star Trek series may boldly go where none have gone before by making Captain Kirk bisexual. Now, right out the gate, obviously this is woke influenced and it's also just defiling this older character. Like they couldn't come up with something new. People don't care about Star Trek Discovery. So that's why they first went with Star Trek Picard. And, Picard is already really old, but he's still younger than this captain, than William Shatner, who plays Captain Kirk. But now they're bringing Kirk back too. And on top of that, they had to add a twist and make him bisexual, which is kind of just like the weakest, I don't know, the lamest thing to claim in the whole alphabet community because anyone can really say they're bisexual. That's like the one that kind of gets a lot of flack. Even within their own communities, they call that out sometimes because they know that, sometimes people just say it to get attention. That's what happened with Lily Singh, that late night show host who came from YouTube and went to host a late night show. And she was dubbed the first bisexual woman of color to host late night. And there's still no proof she was actually bisexual. So it kind of plays into this meme. And I think Star Trek might be doing the same because, I don't know, I guess they're going to have to show him being bi some way. But it's obvious they're doing this to get attention. This is obviously a woke move and a woke premise, just trying to get like cheap views and stuff. And it's just not the way to produce a show. And the other part that's really lame is like they have to go back and ruin another favorite character like they did with Picard. I mean, at least they didn't make Picard alphabet intentionally. I don't even know if he has a romantic interest in the new series, but in this one, obviously something's going to be up, and that's why I want to read more details and talk about it. CBS could be about to make Captain James T. Kirk bisexual in the upcoming series of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. The iconic Starfleet captain was portrayed as a notorious womanizer in the original series, but a huge change to the Star Trek canon could see his sexuality become more nuanced than that. According to the Star Trek insider Daniel Richtman, sources have suggested the network is toying with the idea of making Captain Kirk bi in the next series, which will be a sequel to Discovery and a prequel to the original series. CBS officially announced that the next Trek installment last month with a video of the cast explaining how excited they are to continue playing their characters. Now, right out the gate, I would say just the way they talk about it, it seems really cheap to me. It seems like, oh, we're going to make someone bi, like, oh, we're going to do this. And it reminds me, like, I've seen some of the producers and the videos and the people talking about who's making Star Trek now, and they're really, really shallow like this. They're not the best people. They're like some of the worst Hollywood writers and stuff. And they just totally butchered this series and everything that's going on with Star Trek. And this is just another sign of that. It's another sign that they don't know what they're doing. They can't come up with good original ideas. They can't, make this stuff work. So they're trying to pander and get this woke crowd to them. This is what other channels have done. We talked about CW having their, the first girl Batwoman and she's a lesbian. And then there's always this hype around putting these alphabet characters in when really this shouldn't even be like a big thing. Like this is just a character and they're rewriting him. And I think actually, now that I think about it, remembering this first sentence of the article, it actually makes sense to me because I think this is like a rewrite, like a readjustment, because they're actually feeling guilty about him being a womanizer before. James T. Kirk was always a good looking dude. He would hook up with chicks sometimes on the original show. And that was cool in the 70s. And it actually turned into Star Trek having one of the first interracial kisses on TV when he kisses a black chick. But the problem now is womanizing and guys that are dating a lot of girls or hooking up, like that's severely frowned upon in the present. Like you're not supposed to be dating. Like everyone's supposed to be bowing down to women, and like you can't be an aggressive male or like even just a intense, kind of lover. You can't do that anymore. That's offensive in the present. So I think this bi thing is kind of trying to readjust for that and like course correct. And it makes sense, but it's definitely messed up. And I don't think there's anything wrong with what Kirk did before. Like we're not talking about anything illegal or anything offensive. Like he just liked girls, he flirted with them, and then the girls liked him and they hooked up. I mean, that's not an issue. It shouldn't be an issue now, but apparently it's an issue for these people, these sorts of beta left-wing SJWs working at CBS and Star Trek. Around the same time, it was reported that Kirk would make an appearance, with rumors that the network had their eye on the Mandalorian's Jake Cannavale for the role. Originally played by William Shatner with an unexplained tendency to rip his shirt off in the midst of battle, Captain Kirk's promiscuity was a recurring and prominent theme in the original series. The show's creator, Gene Roddenberry, depicted him as the epitome of masculinity and frequently highlighted his sexual exploits with gorgeous females of every size, shape, and type, while simultaneously being married to the Enterprise. Okay, so now we're getting to him having these romances. We're talking about him liking all kinds of girls, like we mentioned. He has a minority girl at one point and different things like that. He dates an alien. And we see this pop up in the Star Trek movie, like I mentioned, the 2009 reboot. Like he sleeps with this green alien chick at the beginning. And I think that is it's just a sign that these SJWs, they don't get what's cool and what works and what people want to see. Because one of the problems, and this is something that other movie reviewers and stuff have brought up, and one of the problems with some other series, like say Star Wars, is they didn't have any romance. They didn't have enough like sexuality. Like everyone seemed like robots and aliens, and they didn't have any love or any romance and flirting. And that's the thing. Like that's what made Star Trek and other movies that have it better, because it's like we're humans. This is how we are. We see someone that's attractive, we might smile at them or something. But when you remove that from a movie, it just makes it very like surgical, like you're watching some history channel or something. It's just not as interesting, and it's not as, appealing to the human spirit. Like we want what we want, and it's not like everything has to be sexualized, certainly, but the fact that they're like demonizing this is just another troublesome thing. It just goes to show that they're just kind of like trying to be anti-male in a lot of ways, because the thing that's about this is they encourage female sexuality. Like that's something that we always see the leftists do. They're always talking about them, and they do their rallies and they get naked and everything. And they talk about girls wanting to, be able to sleep around and cheat on their husbands and stuff. But if guys do it, that's bad now. And even looking back on the past, they'll retroactively make it bad. So I see this bisexual move as a course correction, and it's really kind of diluting and ruining this popular character. And that's the worst part. The worst part is they're taking over this popular character, and they couldn't create a new one. And then we've seen that happen over and over again. A lot of leftists do this too. They invade popular spaces, take over characters, maim them, like destroy them, and then they just walk away because they didn't really care about the property in the first place. But we're the ones that actually might care. I'm not sure if all you guys are Star Trek fans like me. I like Star Wars, Star Trek. I like all this stuff. So I find it very interesting, and I like talking about it. So I hope you enjoyed this session. I hope you know and feel what I'm talking about. Tell me what you think. Comment your thoughts on everything below. Tell me what you think about Star Trek, this possible bi character, and all this other stuff going on in the series. Also, hit that like button to get this video shared. And until next time, you guys have a great day. Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about our new second channel. NoBS News has been really ramping up recently. We've got over 10,000 subscribers now, and it's growing each and every day. This is a new extra channel where I can give you guys more content, which includes extra videos, sometimes streams, sometimes other fun things too, clip shows, whatever you like. NoBS News is going to have it there for you. So make sure you check it out by either searching NoBS News on YouTube or clicking the link below this video. Thanks for your time. Have a good one.